I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. I want to be generous, but we just don't see any progress being made. So what I'm doing is we're going to do secondary sanctions unless we make a deal, and we might make a deal. I don't know. But 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian kids a week are dying. And that's not mentioning the people that are dying also in towns where, you know, he's lobbing missiles into certain towns like Kiev.
President Trump says he is shortening the deadline for Russia to agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine as he grows increasingly frustrated with Vladimir Putin's lack of progress on a deal. Both countries trading fire over the weekend, including Moscow reportedly striking a hospital in southern Ukraine. Ukrainian President Zelensky writing on X, quote, Ukraine welcomes President Trump's efforts and his determination to achieve peace. We are grateful to all the leaders who are helping defend Ukraine and exerting pressure on Russia. Peace is possible, but only when Russia ends the war it itself started. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman at the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, sir, good morning. And I wanted to get your thoughts on the tone that we heard from President Trump yesterday. He made several comments about the fact that he has really lost patience with Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think you said it right, Cheryl. I mean, he's very frustrated. Actually, Putin wanted to frustrate the president, but he was calculating that likely the president would run out of patience and walk away from Ukraine and no longer support them out of sheer frustration. Well, he achieved part of that. He frustrated him, but he's doubling down, and he's changing, recognizing that diplomacy has failed. He's shown extraordinary patience here for months, trying to get Putin to do what? A simple 30-day ceasefire, unconditioned, which Zelensky has agreed to. That's all that was on the table here. And Putin did what in return? He escalated the war, and principally, as the president noted, against civilians. He's killed over 13,000 Ukrainian citizens. He's bombing cities that do not have military targets. He specifically focuses on hospitals. He's hit schools. All of those are war crimes. So the president is out of patience. He's changed the confrontation. He's loading up Ukraine with weapons that they need, using the Europeans to purchase them to take the American taxpayer funding off the table, something we could have done in the previous administration. So that's a good step. And now he's going to double down on tariffs and sanctions. We don't know the specifics. We're very familiar with Senator Graham and the Blumenthal bill, which would impose 500% sanctions on secondary countries that are doing business with Russia, particularly buying Russia's oil, China and India to be most specific, Brazil also. So that's, if the president's estimate is correct, he fulfills that, we're looking at August the 7th or August the 9th for tariffs or sanctions to come into effect. So he has changed his policy here. We're at an inflection point to put more pressure on Putin to come to the negotiating table. We don't know if that's going to work, but we already know what's not working. And that's why the president is moving to a different policy here.
Yeah, he certainly has. And incorporating that with those discussions happening with the Chinese right now is another very interesting piece. You know, you mentioned that. And, you know, President Trump made a lot of news with regards to the Israeli-Hamas conflict. He blamed Hamas for rejecting the latest ceasefire deal to bring the hostages home. Watch this.
Hamas has become very difficult to deal with in the last couple of days because they don't want to give up these last 20, because they think as long as we have them, they have protection. But I don't think it can work that way. So I'm speaking to Bibi Netanyahu, and we are coming up with various plans. We're going to say it's a very difficult situation. They're in deep trouble. They're in deep trouble. You saw October 7th, and you saw what the damage and the horror that they committed. People can't forget that. You know, they tend to forget it, but they can't forget. That was one of the most evil things I've ever seen. And you just cannot forget that.
Well, the New York Post is reporting that Hamas has orders to kill the hostages if the IDF attempts a rescue mission. And there are airdrops for aid, for food. Those supply trucks are entering Gaza. The humanitarian groups there say that a lot more is needed. Hamas is reportedly stealing what is meant for starving Gazans, General. I mean, where do you think the ceasefire talks go from here? And also, I just want to add here that Victoria Coates and Robert Greenway have an op-ed this morning on FoxNews.com that talks about the regional cooperation with our partners there, and it's the Abraham Accords. And they say that this is the way to finally find peace in the Middle East. That's the pathway. Your reaction?
Well, I don't think anytime soon Hamas is going to make a deal to exchange the hostages for prisoners in a 60-day ceasefire. We tried that for almost 6 weeks, and they stiffed the Israelis and they stiffed the United States negotiating team led by Steve Witkoff. And we've withdrawn that team out of sheer frustration. Hamas just would not budge on any compromise whatsoever. So, I mean, credit the president here for pinning the rose on who really is the problem. Are there some humanitarian starvation and serious gravity taking place among the people in Gaza? You betcha there are. But it's Hamas that has stopped the aid from coming in by not making this deal. Now, what the Israelis have done, 250 trucks went in there on Saturday, and they are not conducting operations for 10 hours a day to permit the trucks to come in. When the trucks are at maximum, they're about 600 a day, and hopefully it'll get to that level to get the much-needed food. They're also doing some emergency airdrops, but there's not much in airdrops in terms of content. It is emergency relief only. It's those 600 trucks that are desperately needed. And where are we heading here? We knew this would come down to a very dangerous and critical situation. After all, Hamas took the 250 hostages, Cheryl, for what reason? One, principally to preserve the leadership of Hamas, to use them as leverage to get ceasefires, to get pauses, and now to make certain that they can survive. But so our audience appreciates Netanyahu tried to negotiate an end-of-war deal with Hamas, not the 60-day ceasefire, but an end-of-war deal. He tried that first, and he put on the table, we'll move to the periphery. We'll stop all military operations. Hamas leadership will give you exile out of the country and actually transport you where you want to go, and we will not track you and run you down. Demilitarize the rest of your organization, give up political control. Exchange the hostages for a serious amount of prisoners and detainees. They rejected that deal overwhelmingly. They want to stay there. They want to stay and fight. They want to stay in control. And likely, Cheryl, the sad situation we're facing, at some point, Israel will have to return to the fight. And obviously that is going to increase the risk with the hostages.
Yeah. And also increase the international pressure on Israel, who, again, to your point, since October 7th has been just wanting these people back, these people home, dead or alive. General Jack Keane, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I really appreciate it.
Great talking to you, Cheryl. Thank you.
General Jack Keane.